Aloha everyone, I am geologist Philip Ong, bringing you guys a Maunaloa update today, Friday, April 30th, 2021. Activity in Maunaloa in brief has quieted down a little bit from last week when we had a pattern of earthquakes, but that has shifted a little bit. We'll go into a little bit of the details. This distance from north to south across the summit caldera that went through that big contraction recently and then resumed last week to a slow extension. If we zoom in here, we could maybe see that over the last week we appear to actually have been resuming a slower contraction again. So that was part of the cycle we've described before about how magma comes into the upper parts of the volcano and to the middle of the volcano, and then it spreads out to the side, and then it comes into the top and spreads out. And every time it spreads out, the summit might contract at the top, even as a base spreads apart. And maybe that's the pattern we're seeing here. This is the USGS HVO monitoring page. I'm plotting color by depth now. So these reds and maroons, these are shallow ones, right? So this is the edge of the magma chamber, not a whole lot going on there. The blue ones down here in a purple, that's the deep Pahala earthquakes. But this shows us that there are a couple of these reds in here, and those are the interesting ones, right? We have a couple of reds here, there's red and orange, those are all the flank earthquakes, the red and oranges. So a little bit of flank activity over here in the southern Hilea section of the south flank of Mauna Loa, right? A lot, and really very quiet in a Kauiki section over here, which was active a lot in the previous months. So also we see a few here in the Kona side, over here in this Kona section, right? So the Kona section at similar depth of the south flank. It's interesting to me that if you were to draw a line between these ones and this one, pretty much perpendicular to the rift zone right in here, right? So possibly we're having some movement of magma in the deep rift zone somewhere in there, and that's causing that pushing apart of the south flank, and the volcano is able to spread in this direction here and here. So that's all good. There's no cause for alarm in itself. The volcano grows and spreads in lots of ways without erupting. And what we're concerned about as humans living on the surface, as islanders here, is its eruptions and being prepared for them and talking about them and understanding them a little bit better. And so there's no sign of anything coming up towards the surface there, right? It's really it's that same cycle of sprawling and filling and sprawling and filling and sprawling. And when it can't sprawl anymore, then that's when it can build pressure to then burst out at the summit first, and then after some progression to one of the rift zones, most likely. So we're going to turn to the Iris earthquake browser. And now I'm playing animation of just the last week here. So you can see at the beginning of the sequence, there's some earthquakes in this northwest of the caldera region. But then we start to see Pahala earthquakes or flank earthquakes here, here, and here, kind of in sync. Right? So it's kind of phase one of the week is up here, and phase two is here and here. And so it was feeling, seemingly more, the summit area was feeling more pressure, and then more recently in the week, pressure seems to be on the flanks down in here. Just minor details. It's nothing alarming, like I said. It's just interesting to try to pick apart all the little wiggles the volcano is doing, trying to adjust itself to the point where it finally will erupt someday, but there is no sign of that here yet. It's just the wiggling aspect of it. But that's interesting to see here. These last two magnitude 3s coming in here at the very end, right? There's a 3.2 at 0.6 kilometers depth, so very shallow, around sea level, and one at negative 0.4 kilometers, 3.0, a little doublet that happened at 5:30 a.m. here local time. Here is the last month at the summit of Mauna Loa, the automatic USGS page, and not a whole lot compared to the previous weeks. They're still happening, lots of small ones, but not nearly as many as before. Right? And the way we can tell that, earthquake rates and depths for the past month, and now we have earthquakes per day here on the left, and we had that little cluster swarm of 70, and then there was one of 60. The previous 2 weeks, there was 1 week before that just went off the graph here over a month ago. And the last week, it's been fairly quiet. This is adding up the earthquakes in that little plot at the summit. So really, this is a summit earthquakes measure, and we can see that we've actually are back down below 20, and in fact, around 10 earthquakes per day in that area, which is a lot less, obviously, than other times we've had recently. For the last year, we have had increased activity quite a bit, but in the most recent months here, really it's been a downward trend. Even if we have had sporadic clusters of activity, it's overall been decreasing. We're kind of clumping together a lot of the gaps and peaks all in ones, but that's the long-term pattern as you can see it over the past year here.